Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about my adventures with Superman, Season 2, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we had the whole situation. Let's break the episode down side by side. Where first and foremost, let's have the Clark and Jimmy side of things, where Jimmy's kind of seen as a keynote speaker because he's Superman's best pal, so he's being invited to speak at it, which I love that whole thing of, even Clark's like, are you sure you want me to tag along, Jimmy? He's like, I get it, it's an alien thing you're going in for because you are one of the biggest outspoken people about aliens, but I'm also an alien. But he's like, no, man, it's not even that. I don't need Superman, I need Clark, my best friend and number one hype man. And it's just I think this episode really kind of also showcases that friendship. It's right, he was telling that guy who was taking a photo of him, he's like, yeah, I've saved Superman's life. Because Clark was like, oh yeah, in fact, he actually saved Superman's life. He's like, yeah, I've saved Superman's life a dozen times. And Clark's like, a dozen times? Jimmy's like, yeah, every time I covered for you in college and every time I dragged you to a party. Because I guess it's you would have no social life if I wasn't constantly dragging you to parties or whatever. But then later on, Clark had a very mushy, sentimental moment when he was like, right, you made me feel like the day you told me we were best friends, you made me feel like it was okay that I was different, that I wasn't just, even if I was kind of a weirdo, that, because let's face it, Jimmy's a weirdo too, so you're two peas in a pod. He's like, all right, enough with the mushy stuff, Clark. It is a beautiful friendship, and I think that, they hammer that home just for the fall of the episode, because, hey, lo and behold, he isn't here to keynote speak on oh man, Superman, yada, yada, yada. It's more of a, well, I don't know if they probably had him there to be both, because they're creating two sides of the argument. Jimmy is pro Superman and Lex shows up with his anti-Superman agenda, which we all gotta admit, I don't know why no one calls Lex out for his BS. He's like, oh, if it wasn't for Superman, Amazotech and Dr. Ivo was going down the route he did regardless, because he was pushing tech that wasn't ready, and he wanted to prove himself because he knew the board of directors was going to kick him off the board of the company. So he pushed himself, which is also hypocritical, because considering, hey, you son of a, you were working with him. You essentially co-signed everything he did. So it's such BS, but it's the whole argument that gets used against Batman. Did the freaks of Gotham create Batman? Or did Batman create the freaks of Gotham? It's always the chicken or the egg type of situation. So in this case, was Metropolis weird before Superman showed up? Probably not as weird, but it's gotten weirder. But it's let's face it, Task Force X has been a thing in the making for a long time, ever since Waller and I'm sure the government in general signed off on it after Zero Day. Yes, that was Kryptonians, but it had nothing to do with Clark. Clark had no idea what was going on. He was already here on Earth, obviously. And, he was a kid who knew nothing about, he only just found out about what it means to really be a Kryptonian. He dabbled with it a tiny bit last season, a little bit, and a little bit more now, but he's as human as anyone else. But it turns into that argument of, yes, Superman chooses to be good. But it's also because Lex touches on it a little bit about the argument you're making now. I get the argument you're making because I'm about to say that's humans in general. Humans decide on a daily basis whether they want to be whether they want to be good or bad, and we're not judging every single human. I'm you choose to be good today, but what if you're a terrible person tomorrow? It's it doesn't work like that, but the only reason why Superman is under such scrutiny is because he has such powers, but he's used that power time and time again. But that's the thing, every time you're using your powers, I never shut up about it, because it's one of my favorite episodes is Superman and Lois, the conversation of every time I'm out there using my powers, that trust is being tested over and over and over. They kind of turned a little bit against him last season, but now it's Lex is really leaning, Lex is really hammering home the xenophobia of just right, he should go back to where he came. Well, if he could, he would, but his planet blew up. But that doesn't matter, because I'm sure for Lex is well, then find some other planet out there in this galaxy or the other, And Jimmy tried to like bring home like, right, that's not who Superman is. He's a good guy. He chooses, but like Lex kind of pushes back at every moment. But it's like, once again, Lex worked with Ivo. Like Ivo did that to himself. That wasn't Clark's fault. He's the one that like got consumed by the parasite armor and lost his shit. Like he's continued to be a madman. Like that's him. That's not Clark. That was already somewhere in him. The parasite just brought and amplified what was already there. You know? In fact, Superman's situation is kind of a dictation of just showing you how much better he is. He is the ideal person. I mean, that's supposed to be what Superman represents. He's supposed to represent the best of us, that you can never quite reach that, because he's proven time and time again that he's better than any, like, look at all these humans that have broke bad, who've chosen bad, but Clark, time and time again, has saved the city, has saved the day. In fact, saved the planet, but no one's going to really know about what went down in the season 1 finale of how he handled that and how he's continued to do stuff. You know, it's like, yeah. Also, Lex has his own agenda, considering, hey, I'm working with Task Force X, so I'm really going to push this narrative. Yes, because they had their own reasons to hate Superman, and that's Waller and herself, because I'm going to protect this world, America first, but the world in general, by any means necessary. So, of course, you're going to skew things, which is so messed up, because it's like, hey, like, I don't think they didn't do that on purpose, because Lois and Sam ran to that Star Labs situation, so it's not like they planned for that, but they were able to take advantage of a situation. But it's also like, yeah, the people that came after Sam and Lois are the same people who like are like, you know, Lex is working with. So it's like, you know, it's just like it's such BS. You know, we as the audience we can see the obvious BS, but everyone else is getting sold on this lie. And sadly, in that moment, like, I'll circle to the other side of things afterwards, but with Clark, when he like was trying to explain himself and Lex was really pushing, like, oh, see, getting everyone to realize like he is a threat. And then he goes over to Jimmy. He's like, yo, thanks, Jimmy. I couldn't have done this without you, pal. And in that moment, Jimmy just ran away. And Clark just felt alone, because it's like in that moment he didn't have his best friend. Now, Jimmy didn't do that because like, oh my God, everything Lex is saying is true. It's because, damn it, twofold. One, I can't say anything in this moment to help my best friend, and he feels powerless. It's like, you're my best friend. You told me how important us being best friends was to you, and I can't do anything for you in this moment. I feel like a failure as a best friend. And two, I inspired the dude that's like trying to make you Earth's number one enemy. You know, that's the sad situation of it all. And it's just, that's why, and sadly, Jimmy doesn't realize by doing, like, his lack of, but once again, he felt like he couldn't find the words. It's like, in that moment, it's probably, do I even have the right to say anything? How can I stick up for you when I continue to fail you? I'm failing you right now as your best friend. You know, I know who you are at heart. I know the good that you are, and I just can't do anything for you in this moment, especially knowing, like, I'm the reason why I basically inspired Lex to become your number one hater, essentially, you know? So that pushes Clark to feel even more lonely, especially when he's not able to be around Lois as much either, because she's dealing with everything with her dad and just all of that, which he's kind of going a little crazy, being like, oh, that car's parked outside so long. Oh my God, we need to be wary of Waller. She might be finding out. But he gets a message saying like, right, Waller does know, but he doesn't let Jimmy and Clark know because he lets them do the Star Labs thing. But by the time Lois comes back, she catches her dad leaving. And I love the cut back and forth between, we see like how Lois and her father's relationship got to where it was. Like, once again, he tried to be that person. Like, his attempts to strengthen his little girl to make her prepare for the world, because he know, like, you know, he experienced 0 day. He know, like, he's a military man first and foremost, and then you add into that the fact is that he is also he's a survivor of 0 day, that of course he wants his daughter to be prepared for any dangers that this world is capable of, because he's seen them firsthand of what's out there. And so of course he wants to do what's best for his daughter, and he wasn't always the right father towards her, like from a very young age. As she had talked about it in season 1, like when they were looking for Jimmy, when he was hanging out with Brain and Senor Mala. It's not Senor Mala, is it? Well, Mala in general, I always forget, but Mala and Brain. then when they were looking for him, we found out like she's got some survival skills, but it's because her dad kind of pushed her down that lane. So we kind of got that this episode. We flashed back. We also touch a little bit on the mom conversation because I actually forgot about that until she brought it up. I was like, right, because in Superman and Lois, I don't know what Lois's circumstances are with her parents in general, like her mom in the comics, but at least in Superman and Lois, they made it so her mom didn't die. We don't know what the mom situation is. We just know her mom abandoned her, and then in this one, her mom was sick and dying, but her dad didn't tell her because in his own mind, it's like, oh, I'm trying to protect you. That's also another thing too. Like speaking of Superman and Lois, I'm curious: are they going to ever touch on the Lucy stuff? Because we only see Sam and Lois's relationship, so I'm wondering, like, in this continuity, does Lucy not exist? You know, I'm sure there probably are continuities where she doesn't exist, or maybe she does exist in this continuity, but she's just kind of doing her own thing. Who knows? But Lois always felt the need to try and prove herself to her dad, even present day, being like, am I not good enough? Like, why am I not good enough? He's like, no, Lois, you are good enough. I didn't always showcase it. I wasn't always the best father. And he's like, I wish I had done, at this point in time, I wanted to prepare you for, you know, the world so that you'd be safe. But now, like, I do look back on the way I raised you, and I do, because I think with her mom, there was a balance to it. But eventually, like, I'm sure, like, everything that he's going through, you know, 0 day, just his time in the military, plus losing Lois's mom, he doubled down on, like, right, it's my job to be your protector. I've got to train you up for this world. And he wasn't always, like, because we saw it when she was a little younger, like, there was a little bit of that dad there. But, like, as she got older, he kept pushing and pushing and pushing her more and more. And he tries to be like, that friend Izzy. It's like, no, that was 3 moves ago. That was 3 relocations ago, Dad. Oh, what about so-and-so? It's like, Kristen, well, the fact of the matter is, why would we stay in contact? He's like, well, if they can't keep in contact with you, they're not really your friend. And it just, he didn't realize, like, how isolating it can be. Because what's the point of making new friends if I'm going to have to move again? Like, why is anyone going to keep in contact with me? The fact is, we're moving all the time. I'm never in any place long enough to, like, make it my home. So I think Metropolis is probably, like, the first place that's ever really been a home for Lois in a very long time, just considering everything. I mean, I don't know if she grew up in Metropolis or not. Like, they haven't really covered that. It's also interesting, too, touching on it a little bit, like the Korean, where it's like, I think it was her mom. I think they were saying, like, her mom's name in Korean means Silver Star. Yeah, because he said Uma. But, like, her mom's name was, like, means, like, Silver Star in Korean, so. But yeah, like, Lois is by her dad's side as he's being hunted down by Task Force X. Even eventually getting help at a pawn shop. When I saw those toys, I was like, no way. And then, like, the guy was like, he was like, oh, hey, when? I was like, as in Toy Man? I was like, interesting. Because it's been so long with Supergirl that I don't remember the TV show. Like, Lois, one of her best friends her best friend was Win in Supergirl. And his dad is Toyman, but I think because I don't know if this was canonical to the comics or not, where like Toyman's, because this guy's name is Win, so I think Win in general is Toyman, but maybe they made it specifically for the Supergirl TV show. His dad was Toyman, and then he would become Toyman eventually. I don't know if in the comics, like, Toyman has a son who eventually takes up the mantle. But obviously, you know, that could always go one way or another, you know, deciding on what route the children go, whether it's like, the example that I'd immediately go to, you know, about, just because you have a villain father doesn't mean, obviously, like, Raven and Trigun, you have that, but there's also, like, just because of adaptations and stuff recently, Stephanie Brown, like, she doesn't go down the supervillain route, her father did, so, you know, so that doesn't mean anything, but like I said, I just don't remember what the circumstances were in the Supergirl TV show, because I think Win himself is Toyman in the comics, so that's why some people were wondering if he'd ever go down the villain route. He never did. But like I said, I don't remember what his father's name was, because dad was Toyman, but I don't know if it's a thing of his father is the traditional Toyman, but Win himself, that character, does eventually become Toyman in continuity. But him working at a pawn shop with all those, like, because he's like a demolition expert and explosive expert, so he's one of Sam's contacts, which is interesting. But then it turns out Sam got sold out to Waller. Well, you saw the look on his face. It's not like he did it willingly. He was kind of, I kind of had a feeling the way he was talking. I was like, it sounds like he's selling you out. And lo and behold, he had. So I wonder if he's going to become Toyman in the future. I don't know if that's going to be something where Waller recruits him. It's funny because Waller's creating more supervillains just to go after Superman, but it's also like in her mind, it's like this is also preparation to protect the world from what potentially could come, so it never goes through another Zero Day. But it's like, hey, I'm not even trying to capture Sam anymore. It's like, nah, he's dead. We need to kill him. So, but obviously that led to the whole situation at Star Labs when they're using the tech to fight back against Task Force X. That shield he was using, I'm like, that's not Guardian's shield, is it? And the only reason why that even pops in my head is because of the Supergirl TV show where Jimmy becomes Guardian. I don't think that's what happens in the comic books. I believe Guardian is someone else. I think that's someone else who becomes the character in the comics, but I think Jimmy became him. But I don't know if that was that same shield. Maybe it's just some other... Maybe I'm just overthinking, but yeah. The sad thing is they end up causing that havoc. Obviously, Lois gets out of there with her dad with like that tech that like camouflages her, which I thought was like, oh, like I love how we saw that tech earlier in the episode and now it comes back and they use it to defend themselves. Especially Clark was there helping them out, but he kind of gets like Lois wasn't thinking like, oh my god, like because she doesn't know what's going on with Clark at this point in time, so she didn't know like, oh, what happened at Star Labs actually did more harm than good because it plays into the narrative Lex is setting up. So it's like it's just everything that can go wrong went wrong in this episode. But Lois was trying to convince her dad to stick around, and he said he would, but the problem is he saw how much his daughter got hurt because in his mind it's like, your daughter's begging you to stay, but you can also understand where Sam's coming from. It's like, as long as I'm around you, you're going to be hurt. Because he doesn't know, like, right. He's like, your boyfriend, he's off, he's weird. Not knowing, like, well, her boyfriend's Superman. You probably doubly have issue with him dating your daughter, but at the very least, you could always have some comfort of, well, at least I always know you're never too far away, that Superman's always there. That will probably ease his mind eventually when he finds out. Once again, whether or not that's going to be this season or this show in general, whether they'll ever cover that, we'll have to wait and see. But like I said, just everything that can go wrong does, and it's sad too because like Lois was so happy, like, okay, Dad, you're sticking around this time, you're believing me, and just as like she finds out her dad left, you cut to the past where she thought something happened to her dad, but it turned out it was all a test, and for her, it's like you still don't get it. I thought something happened to you. It's like, you're not going to change. So fine. You want me to be independent on my own? Fine. I'll show you I can take care of myself without you. And then lo and behold, all these years, all this time later, just when she had hope about being around her dad again, she's like, fine, here I am on my own again. And it's sad. And especially like, and I love the outro. Like if you stick around for after the credits, you look at the pictures, all three of it's kind of like it's back in season 1 where they were split up. Like after like Clark found out that Lois reveals that she knows Clark's secret, and like obviously Jimmy was like feeling left out by his friends. Like I think it was a photo of all three of them together, and it was ripped up if I remember correctly. But now we have them individually, like Jimmy staring up at the sky, Lois kind of upset about her dad, and then Clark flying in the sky, like, after he tries to reach out the car, which we'll get to in a second. So it's like they're divided, and just in this moment, all three of them feel so alone when they need each other the most. Because she tried to get in contact with Clark, and Clark heard a voicemail, but it's like he had overheard her talking to her dad, being like, yeah, he's a little off and different, but she's like, yeah, but that's what I love about him. But of course, storytelling wise, you're like, of course Clark isn't going to hear that part. It's just, while Clark's at his lowest, it's just one thing after another, being despised by people, Lex bringing up all this stuff, and also Clark can't really fight it too much, considering like, well, I know what my people do, they conquer, and what they did, he felt that way last season when he was talking to Sam and found out what happened. And now it's this, and just feeling like, wait, like Jimmy wasn't really there for me, and I can't really be with Lois because she's got to deal with all this stuff with her dad. But it's like, because they had that discussion in episode 2 about, right, me being an alien, does that bother you? And she was like, no, it doesn't. Does me being human bother you? And it's like the complicated thing of being from so different worlds and just feeling so alone. That yes, he has these people, but it's just like you're the only alien like you're one of the few Kryptonians left too. So he wanted to constantly talk to Lois about it, but they were just like, so much was happening, they just could never line up. I mean, that's life. And so he ends up making a decision on his own to reach out to Kara. He's just like, I'm tired of being alone. It's like, yes, he has people around him, but in this moment but it's still that thing of, this episode was a reminder for him. Like, he's able to kind of like, for so long he's been able to be like, yeah, I'm an alien, but I'm very much like the humans. This episode in particular made him, like, it's always been something he's doubted and dealt with ever since he was a kid, but he was able to kind of push that aside. But now it's like at a low point in his life, when you're at your lowest, even the good stuff can fade away and you just drown in that sorrow and loneliness. Because like there's no like, you know, even if he feels love, he has his parents, he has Jimmy, he has Lois, but he had a nightmare in that first episode about being reminded about being an alien, and just all those fears of his not feeling welcomed, always feeling like othered, you know, comes at this moment. It's like, well, he knows for a fact he has a cousin out there, and it's like, right, like I can find someone else that knows me, that can understand me. Once again, we don't know what Kara's like in this continuity. She might start off evil because she might be rolling with the other Kryptonians that are alive. Once again, if they go down a traditional situation of they were in the Phantom Zone, that's why they were still alive, and she was in the Phantom Zone with them. Once again, making it so, like, we also don't know if, like, she's going to be a little bit younger than him, or are they going to be about the same age, which, once again, some continuities, I feel like I've made it so they're not, like, Supergirl, they're not the same age. He's older than her because she was trapped in the Phantom Zone. Like I said, I don't remember if that's how it worked in Smallville or not, so. But either way, we do see the ending where, once again, Alex has been able to sway so many people to back, like Star Labs in particular has decided to back Task Force X. We even see a military guy there. So there's some high-ranking people backing Task Force X. So they're going to get a lot of backing and all the equipment needed to push back against Superman. And at the same time, we see it wasn't Kara, or maybe it was, but someone else got that signal instead and found their way to Earth. So big head honcho Kryptonian in the armor. It screamed Zod last season. It continues to scream Zod. So we'll see at the time where it's like, hey, aliens aren't bad, but here's a bad one. It's like, yeah, there are bad aliens just like there are bad humans, but it shouldn't define an entire species, you know? So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with all of this, how our characters find themselves back to each other, what the aftermath of this episode looks like storytelling wise for the next episode is going to be interesting to see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.